My grandmother gripped my wrist at the Halcyon Tower party. "How are you spending your $3 million trust fund?" she whispered. I froze. I didn't have one. 3 hours later, internal news blasted rumors of my misuse of family funds. That night, I opened her safe. Inside, a USB key and a 4-word note. "Return it in public. My name is Rowan Vale. I'm 29, and I am the head of compliance for a company my grandmother built and my family now runs. Or more accurately, I'm the family's designated buzzkill, the necessary joyless auditor they have to tolerate because the SEC exists. The family and founders brunch at Westbridge Systems is not about family, and it's certainly not about brunch. It's a performance of stability for our largest shareholders, staged on the top floor of the Halcyon Tower. The room is a testament to our stock price. 3 walls of floor-to-ceiling glass, reflecting a sterile, bright sky. A string quartet saws politely at some modern, minimalist piece in the corner, their notes vanishing into the polite clinking of silver on porcelain. I had just closed the quarterly internal audit. It was a brutal, sleepless 6-week slog through firewalls and encrypted ledgers, ending with a report that made my Aunt Marla, our CFO, look at me with a particular kind of surgical hatred. I felt drained, hollowed out, but clean. The numbers balanced. The systems were, for now, compliant. I was holding a flute of champagne I hadn't touched, trying to look appreciative of the quartet, when she moved in. My grandmother, Evelyn Vale, 82 years old, spine like rebar, dressed in a sharp, dove-gray suit that probably cost more than my salary. She is the ghost in our machine, the matriarch whose name is literally carved into the granite lobby downstairs. The press adores her. The board fears her. I never know what to think about her. She didn't tap my shoulder. She placed her hand directly on my wrist, her fingers cold, her rings hard against my pulse point. The chatter at our table, a mix of venture capitalists and legacy board members, died instantly. "Rowan, dear," she said. Her voice was light, a dry rustle of old paper, but it carried, "I was just wondering, how are you spending your $3 million trust fund?" The string quartet hit a dissonant chord, or maybe that was just in my head. I stood perfectly still. The champagne flute felt suddenly heavy, my smile a concrete mask I'd forgotten to take off. The words didn't compute. "I'm sorry. Grandma?" "Your trust fund," she repeated, giving my wrist a small, insistent squeeze. "The $3 million, I do hope you're putting it to good use. Real estate, perhaps? Something solid. I am the head of compliance. I am the woman who tracks every decimal point, every offshore routing number. My salary is public record in the annual report. I drive a 5-year-old Audi. I have a 401k, a crippling mortgage, and exactly 0 trust funds." I don't have a trust fund, Grandma," I said, forcing a small, confused laugh. It was the wrong answer. At the next table, a journalist from the Financial Chronicle, who was definitely not supposed to be taking pictures, lifted his phone. The click of the digital shutter was sharp as a gunshot. I saw the whispers start, like a ripple in a toxic pond, lips moving behind champagne flutes, the VCs looking at me, then at each other, their expressions shifting from polite interest to sharp, avian calculation. A Vale lying about money? Or a Vale so incompetent she didn't know about her own money? Both were bad. My Aunt Marla, sitting to Evelyn's left, let out a sigh of profound exasperation. Marla, our CFO, who lives in spreadsheets and considers human emotion a rounding error. She leaned forward, placing her napkin on the table. A small, tight smirk played on her lips, an expression she usually reserved for when she'd found a loophole in the tax code. "Evelyn, honestly," Marla said, her voice dripping with pitying condescension. "She is joking. Of course, she's just private." She looked at the shareholders. "Rowan is extremely private about her finances. Aren't you, dear?" The air didn't just change, it solidified. The oxygen turned to glass. Marla hadn't helped me. She had confirmed the fund's existence and painted me as a liar for denying it. I was trapped. If I denied it again, I was arguing with the CFO and the founder. If I agreed, I was admitting I'd just lied to my grandmother in front of 24 of our most powerful backers. My phone vibrated against my hip, a single, hard buzz. I kept the smile plastered on my face, my eyes locked on Marla's, which were gleaming with quiet, vicious triumph. "Of course," I managed to say, my voice sounding thin. "Just private." Evelyn released my wrist. "See? Nothing to worry about," she smiled, a serene, reptilian curving of the lips, and turned back to the CEO of a rival tech firm. The buzz in my pocket felt less like a notification and more like an electric shock. I palmed my phone under the table, angling the screen away from the journalist. It was an anonymous email, sent from a masked internal server. Subject: FW, official summons, R. Vale. My fingers went numb. I clicked it. There were 2 attachments. The first was a JPEG, a screenshot of a bank statement from a bank I'd never heard of, based in Delaware. My full legal name, Rowan Elspeth Vale, was at the top, and there, in the available balance box, was the number £3,009, $420.58. It was clean, digital, undeniable. My heart was hammering against my ribs. A frantic bird in a small cage. This was impossible. I would know, as compliance head. I ran my own background checks quarterly to avoid this exact kind of scenario. My thumb slipped. I opened the second attachment. Disciplinary Hearing RV, PDF. It was an official letterhead from Westbridge HR, co-signed by Marla and our head of legal. "You are hereby summoned to a mandatory pre-disciplinary hearing to discuss significant findings of non-disclosure and potential conflict of interest related to undisclosed personal assets. Failure to declare the Trillium Trust constitutes a material breach." The meeting was scheduled for tomorrow morning. I slowly, very slowly, lifted my head. The room was back to its dull roar. The quartet was playing again, but none of it registered. My gaze snapped across the table, past the floral centerpiece, and locked directly with my grandmother's. She was watching me. She hadn't been watching the CEO she was talking to. She had been watching me read the email she couldn't possibly have known about. Her expression was not one of concern, not of confusion, not of anger. It was perfectly, terrifyingly serene. It was the calm, placid expression of a master strategist who had just placed her queen in the center of the board, sacrificing a pawn to force the king into check. She had just started the game. My hand, shaking, went to my purse on the floor beside me. My fingers brushed against the cold, heavy metal object inside. A key. Not a house key, but an old-fashioned, ornate brass skeleton key to her private safe, the one in the study of her old limestone house on Mariner Row. She had given it to me last week, after I'd helped her retrieve some old stock certificates. "You're the only one in this family who respects a lock. Rowan," she'd said, "keep this, just in case." Just in case. The brunch, the public question, the camera flash, Marla's immediate, practice takedown, the anonymous email, delivered with surgical precision, containing the proof of a crime I didn't commit, and the summons for my execution. It was a trap, a beautiful, elegant, diamond-plated trap laid by my own family. They weren't just trying to fire me, they were trying to bury me, discredit the head of compliance before she could sign off on that quarterly audit. The audit I'd just filed. The audit where I had flagged 3 anomalous executive bonus payments routed through an offshore subsidiary. Payments authorized by Marla. I looked back at Evelyn. She knew. She had to have known. She didn't set the trap, but she knew it was there. She knew they were coming for me. And she hadn't warned me. She had handed me a key. I stared at the matriarch of the Vale family, the woman who built an empire from nothing, and I understood the cold, brutal clarity of my position. The bomb had already gone off. I was just in the blast radius. I had a choice. I could walk into that hearing tomorrow and be dismembered by HR. My reputation shredded. My career over. The disgraced Vale, who lied about her own secret millions. Or I could use the key. I could go to Mariner Row, open that safe, and find out exactly what my grandmother wanted me to find. Eveline Vale met my gaze and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, as if to say, "Well, what are you waiting for?" The choice was clear. I would either be the scandal they buried, or I would be the one to unlock the truth and flip the entire board. Right here, right in front of them all. In public, I didn't excuse myself from the brunch. I simply stood up, placed my untouched champagne on a passing tray, and walked out of the Halcyon Tower. The string quartet was still playing. No one tried to stop me. The exit was a silent, smooth glide in a glass elevator, descending 40 floors while the adrenaline turned my blood to ice water. My family, the Vales, are the brand in Coldwater Falls. We are not just wealthy. We are foundational. Our name is chiseled into the hospital wing, the public library, and the stone archways of the local university. We are a legacy of service, a pillar of the community. This performance is managed by my Uncle Grant, our Chief Communications Officer. He curates the perfect family optics. The main hallway at Westbridge HQ is what Grant calls the Wall of Honor. It's a long, sterile corridor lined with 2 decades of professionally staged photographs. The Vales at the hospital gala, handing over a comically large check. The Vales at the Tech for Tomorrow banquet, accepting another glass obelisk. The Vales at the company picnic, laughing with forced, toothy brilliance. In every photo, the composition is precise. My Aunt Marla, the CFO, is always slightly to the left, looking severe and responsible. The guardian of the purse, Uncle Grant, is front and center, his smile wide and blinding, his arm around a politician or a local celebrity. My cousin Tate, head of strategy, is always just behind them, the heir apparent, projecting ambition and ruthless modernity. And then there's me. In the photos from the last 5 years, since I joined the company, I am invariably at the edge. My presence is an inconvenient fact. In the 2022 gala photo, I am partially obscured by a potted ficus. In last year's Founders Day picture, the crop is so tight that I am literally just a shoulder and an ear, my face sliced in half by the silver frame. I am the compliance officer, the auditor, the uncomfortable wall you can't quite get rid of, but you can certainly frame out of the official narrative. This entire gleaming software conglomerate, Westbridge Systems, is a sanitized evolution of what my grandmother built. Eveline Vale didn't start with code. She started with steel. She founded Vale Mechanicals, a gritty machine shop, in 1968. She built precision parts for aerospace and defense, and she built it with grease on her hands and a ledger book she balanced herself. She was a builder. Her children, my father, long since retired to Florida, Marla, and Grant, are not builders. They are managers. They inherited the cash cow and, in the late 90s, pivoted. They liquidated the dirty assets and poured the capital into the clean, shiny, infinitely scalable world of enterprise software. They didn't build the new company. They acquired it, rebranded it, and took it public. Marla guards the money. Grant polishes the image. Tate plans the next acquisition, and I watch them. I didn't come in through the family door. I got my finance degree from Wharton, passed the bar in New York, and spent 5 years at a brutal regulatory firm in Dutchsea. When I applied to Westbridge, I used my mother's maiden name on the initial application. I aced the interviews. By the time they realized which Vale I was, I had already signed the offer, and it was too politically awkward for them to rescind it. They have resented my competence ever since. To them, I am not family. I am a bug in their system, the uncomfortable wall that insists on processes, on triple-checking disclosures, on asking why a vendor in the Cayman Islands is being paid for consulting. My grandmother Eveline understood. She was the only one. She'd corner me at those dreadful holiday parties. ignoring the circus managed by Grant, and murmur her core philosophy in my ear. Remember, Rowan, clean or dirty, money always leaves a mark. It wants to be counted. Your job isn't to judge it, it's to find the mark. I found a mark 6 weeks ago. It was right after the New Year's holiday. I came back to the office, and my top analyst told me our team had been locked out of several executive directories. The official IT ticket, CCing Marla, read, per executive order, access to the following subfolders is restricted to C-level and strategy, pending a Q2 initiative. Compliance access is revoked. It was blatant. It was clumsy. And it was the first real mistake Marla had ever made. She was so arrogant, so sure of her control, that she didn't try to hide the restriction. She just enforced it. I didn't fight it. I didn't send an angry email demanding access. I didn't celebrate the win of finding their secret. I accumulate evidence. I smiled at the IT tech, I approved the ticket, and that night, from my home terminal, I ran a trace on the metadata of the locked folders. I couldn't see what was in them, but I could see when they were last accessed and by whom. I mentally bookmarked that list of folders. It became my underground map. While Marla and Tate were building their Q2 initiative, I was running parallel analytics on every vendor payment, every executive bonus, every wire transfer that touched the C-level budget. I was looking for the shadow, the negative space that those locked folders were designed to hide. Which led me to the quarterly audit I'd just filed, the 3 anomalous bonus payments, the offshore entity, the exact discrepancy they were now trying to pin on me with this $3 million trust fund ambush. They are smart, but they are not builders. They have forgotten the foundations. They have forgotten the woman who built the entire company on the principle of a balanced ledger. They have forgotten that Evelyn Vale respects only one thing, the mark the money leaves. And in their rush to frame me, to set their public trap and eliminate the uncomfortable wall, they forgot one small, critical detail. They forgot who was in Evelyn's study last week. They forgot who she talked to about old stock certificates, who she lamented couldn't trust the new digital locks, and who she handed that heavy, cold, brass key to. They forgot that I, Rowan Vale, was the last person to turn the lock in that safe, and now, I was the only one, besides Evelyn, who could open it. The Halcyon Tower, with its glass walls and phantom string quartet, felt like another planet. That evening, I drove to Mariner Row. The house was dark. It wasn't a mansion, but a formidable block of limestone, old and silent, holding its ground against the newer, glassier neighbors. My grandmother hadn't lived here in years, but it was still her study, her vault. I let myself in with my own key, the air cold and smelling of old paper, lemon oil, and the faint, metallic scent of the safe itself. The study was dark wood and leather, no computers, save for the one I brought in my bag. The safe was a black, steel rectangle hidden behind a heavy painting of a joyless Dutch merchant. It was old world, a relic from Vale Mechanicals. I slid the heavy, cold brass key Evelyn had given me into the lock. It wasn't a combination lock. It was a physical one. It required pressure. I turned the key. The sound was not a click. It was a heavy, deep thud of tumblers shifting, a sound of absolute finality. The door hissed open on well-oiled hinges. There was no cash, no jewelry, just 3 items resting on the green felt lining. 1. A slim, silver USB drive, modern, sleek. 2. A dark blue, leather-bound book, heavy in my hand, a ledger, not a journal. 3. A single, folded sheet of my grandmother's thick, cream-colored stationery. I unfolded the note first. 4 words, written in her sharp, inclined script. Return it, in public. I placed the items on her massive mahogany desk, the old and the new, the analog and the digital. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. My machine whirred, recognizing the hardware. A single directory appeared on my screen. Trillium. My breath caught. As head of compliance, I have root access to every legal entity, every shell, every subsidiary Westbridge Systems owns, domestically or offshore. I have never seen this name. It was not on our books. It was a ghost. I clicked. The directory was immaculate. Subfolders organized by fiscal year, bank statements, formation documents. It was a fully fledged legal entity, a Delaware corporation, and its sole director was listed as Evelyn Vale. I left the screen glowing and opened the ledger. The paper was thick, the lines precise. This was her real book, the one she kept before Marla digitized everything. The first few pages were old, entries from the 80s and 90s. Then, it skipped to 5 years ago. Her handwriting, sharp as glass. It was a list of her grandchildren. Tate Vale, Trust Account 4A. Conditional on Profitable European Expansion. Melanie Vale, Trust Account 4B. Conditional on Medical Degree. Page after page. Each grandchild had an allocation, a purpose, a test. Then I found my page. Rowan Elspeth Vale. My hands were shaking, just slightly. It wasn't a trust account number, it was a name. Trillium subaccount. Amount, $3,000. Funded, 24 months prior. Condition, upon demonstration of independent integrity. I stared at the words, a $3 million trust fund. It was real. It had my name on it, the name on the USB drive, my company. And then I saw the transaction log beneath the entry. It was not a balance, it was a drain. 18 months ago. Withdrawal. $1,000 SARS. 11 months ago. Withdrawal. $750,000. 6 months ago. Withdrawal. $1,000. 3 weeks ago. Withdrawal. $248,579.42. Current balance. $1,420. The money was gone. Drained over 18 months. Emptied just 3 weeks ago. I turned back to my laptop. My fingers flew. I didn't need the corporate network. I had my own encrypted audit files. The ones Marla thought she'd locked me out of. I had backed up the metadata. I opened my report from that morning, the one that was sitting on the server. Unread. The one that flagged 3 anomalous executive bonus payments I couldn't find a source for. My eyes moved between the leather-bound ledger and the glowing screen. Ledger withdrawal. 18 months ago. $1,000. My audit flag. 18 months ago. Unsourced executive bonus. T. Vale. $1,000. Ledger withdrawal. 11 months ago. $750,000. My audit flag. 11 months ago. Unsourced executive bonus. G. Vale. $750,000. Ledger withdrawal. 6 months ago. $1,000. My audit flag. 6 months ago. Unsourced executive bonus. M. Vale. $1,000. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a 1-to-1 match. They hadn't just gotten mystery bonuses. They had paid themselves with my money. They had drained my trust fund to line their own pockets and disguised it as C-level compensation. But how? A transaction like that, pulled from a ghost entity, would still need authorization. It would need a signature. I pulled the deep metadata from the transaction logs. My blood went cold. Approval. R. Vale. Signature. Digital. Timestamp. Redacted. Approval. R. Vale. Signature. Digital. Timestamp. Redacted. My digital signature, my credentials, my approval. They hadn't just stolen the money, they had used my name to do it. This is what the hearing was about. This was the undisclosed personal asset and conflict of interest. They were going to present this as me paying myself and my colleagues a massive compliance breach. They were going to destroy me with my own signature. But I knew I hadn't signed it. I pulled my personal records. The first transaction. October 10th, 9:15 a.m. I opened my travel folder. E-ticket. American Airlines, Flight 44. BOS to JFK. Departure. 9:05 a.m. I had my scanned boarding pass. I was in the air. My laptop was off. My phone was on airplane mode. It was physically impossible for me to have authorized that transfer. I dug deeper into the system logs I'd mirrored before Marla locked me out. I traced the authorization protocol for the signature. It didn't come from my terminal. It didn't come from my IP. It came from a senior executive proxy. I traced the proxy, a workflow I'd never seen before, one she must have built with the DevOps team she controlled. It was a backdoor. Workflow. Marla override exec pay. My Aunt Marla hadn't just found a loophole. She built one. She had created a digital skeleton key to impersonate any officer in the company, and she used it to impersonate me. She used it to sign my name, on my behalf, to drain my own trust fund, a fund I never knew existed, and pay herself, her brother, and her nephew. The final piece was the USB drive. There was one last folder in the Trillium directory, Destination Final Draw. I clicked it. It wasn't a bank transfer. It was a scanned PDF. A contract, a massive, multi-year sponsorship agreement. Westbridge Systems proudly partners with the Future Daughters Foundation. I'd never heard of this foundation. It was new. The contract was signed by my Uncle Grant. The logo on the letterhead, slick, modern, purple and silver, was plastered all over the PR mock-ups in the same folder. This was his new pet project, the final withdrawal. The $248,579.42 was the seed money to launch it. They had stolen $3 million from me. Marla took her cut, Tate took his, Grant took his, and then, the final insult. Grant used the leftovers to create a vanity PR fund, laundering the theft as corporate benevolence, all of it signed off with my forged digital signature. I looked at the ledger. I looked at the screen. I looked at the forward note. Evelyn hadn't staged this to save me. She wasn't my rescuer. She was my client. She, the founder, had been locked out of her own books by Marla's digital fortress. She could see the money was gone from her private ledger, but she couldn't see where. She couldn't navigate the proxy workflows and the ghost servers. She didn't give me the key to save me from their trap. She gave me the key because she had hit a wall. She needed someone who respected the locks and understood the code. She wasn't protecting me. She was arming me. She was pointing me at the enemy. She had left me the map, the weapon, and the objective. Return it. In public. I slept for 2 hours in my office chair, fully clothed. At 7:00 a.m., my laptop chimed with the precision of an executioner's clock. The email was from HR, but the language was pure Marla, filtered through legal. Subject: Formal summons. Pre-disciplinary hearing. Ms. Vale. Following troubling findings from a preliminary financial review, you are summoned to a mandatory hearing today, October 23rd, at 10:00 a.m. in the Halcyon Tower, 40th floor, Conference Room A. The nature of the hearing concerns the discovery of a significant, undisclosed personal asset, the Trillium Trust, and evidence suggesting material breach of your fiduciary duties, conflict of interest, and gross misuse of corporate funds and credentials. Please be prepared to discuss these matters in full. You may bring legal counsel. I clicked accept on the calendar invitation, my hand steady. Then I looked at my main corporate calendar, a massive company-wide block, also starting at 10:00 a.m., already loomed. Event, the Q3. All Hands Transparency Forum. Host, Grant Vale. Location, Halcyon Tower, 40th floor, main auditorium. Note: this event will be live-streamed to all employees and external partners. Attendance for all Coldwater Falls staff is mandatory. My blood didn't run cold. It settled, a deep, heavy, patient calm. The hearing wasn't a hearing. Conference Room A was adjacent to the main auditorium. They weren't scheduling a conflict. They were scheduling a performance. The script was suddenly, brutally clear. Grant, my uncle, the ringmaster of corporate optics, would open his transparency forum. He would speak about trust, integrity, and the Vale legacy. Then, At the opportune moment, he would receive troubling news. He would look pained. He would announce, with great sorrow, that he had to pause the forum. Then they would retrieve me from the hearing next door. They would march me onto that stage, under the hot lights, in front of the entire company and the live stream cameras. They would present the evidence of my theft. They would break the news live, painting me as the rogue element, the uncomfortable wall that had finally crumbled into corruption. It was brilliant, it was vicious, and it was airtight. By sacrificing me on the altar of his transparency forum, Grant would simultaneously eliminate the auditor who was about to expose him and emerge as the hero who rooted out corruption, even within his own family. My audit would be buried, invalidated as the bitter work of a disgraced employee caught stealing. I looked at the clock, 7:05 a.m. I had 3 hours to dismantle their entire narrative. I started with the signature. My forged digital signature on the Trillium transfers. I had the logs from Evelyn's USB. I traced the IP address of the terminal that executed the Marla override command, 203.113.42. An internal IP. I ran it through the network architecture map. Terminal ID, Exec Lounge 42A. The executive lounge on the 42nd floor, a glass box accessible only by sea-level keycards, a place Marla, Grant, and Tate practically lived. Next, the cameras. I opened the security archives. I requested the feed for the 42nd floor executive hallway, time-stamped for the night of the final, largest transfer. The system returned an immediate error. Query failed. Log corrupt. File status, offline maintenance. Maintenance, convenient. Marla's IT department was thorough. They had wiped the primary server. But they weren't thorough enough. They were managers, not builders. They forgot about the beta testers. The DevOps team, the coders who built and tested the security protocols, were my people. Not because they liked me, but because I'd saved their department from Marla's budget cuts twice, arguing that robust testing environments are non-negotiable compliance. They ran parallel test servers. They mirrored the live security feeds to stress test the network, and they never, ever remembered to scrub their mirror cache. I bypassed the main archive and went directly into the DevOps test directory. Dev srv04 mirror cache/cam feeds. I found the file. Cam exec lounge 42 beta feed 2100-2200 back. My laptop whirred as I downloaded the 4 GB file. I opened it. The feed was grainy, shot from a high, awkward angle, but the timestamp in the corner was sharp and clear. I fast-forwarded. The hallway was empty. 21:08:14. The door to the lounge slides open. My cousin, Tate. He looks left. He looks right. He disappears inside. 21:11:02. The door slides open again. My aunt, Marla. Her face is tight. All business. In her left hand, she is gripping a small black object, a physical USB security token, the God key required to execute a C-level proxy command. She enters. The door slides shut. My eyes snap to the system log from Evelyn's file. Timestamp, 21:16:05. Action, delegate sign, user, M. Vale, proxy target file, Trillium RV sub-terminal, ID, exec lounge 42A. They were in the room. They had the token. They executed the transfer. I had them. I had the video, the log, and the timeline. My first instinct was to call my grandmother. I dialed her private line. It rang once, then clicked. Busy. They were with her, Marla and Grant, no doubt, pre-booking their seats for the matinee, feeding her the same story they were about to feed the company. My phone buzzed in my hand, a text message from Evelyn. Let them speak first. A cold electric shock went up my spine. She wasn't being managed. She knew. This was not advice. It was a tactical order. She wasn't just giving me permission to fight. She was telling me how to win. Let them build the stage. Let them mount the soapbox. Let them hang the noose. the higher they climbed, the harder they would fall. I understood. I couldn't just counterattack. I had to let them launch the missile, and then turn it around on them in midair. Grant would control the production. The moment I tried to show my video file on the main screen, he would cut the feed. I needed my own feed. I called Rick, the head of the technical AV crew, bypassing Grant's PR team entirely. "Rick? Rowan Vale? Ms. Vale? Busy morning." His voice was terse. He was setting up for the all hands. "I have a Priority 1 compliance request. I need an independent camera deployed for the 10 a.m., not part of the main broadcast." "A what?" "I'm not. Grant's team has the run of show locked." "This isn't for the show, Rick. This is for my audit. I need a discrete camera, gantry mounted, with a clean, tight shot on the entire C-suite VIP row. I want to see their faces. I want the feed patched only to my personal terminal, not the broadcast booth. Just me. This is a non-negotiable C-level compliance directive. You understand?" There was a long pause. Rick was a technical guy. He hated the PR team's narratives. He lived on facts, and he was terrified of a compliance audit. "A gantry mount, tight on the execs, isolated feed. You got it. Ms. Vale, it'll be ugly, but it'll be clear. That's all I need. Rick, thank you." One last step. Digital evidence was fleeting. A feed can be cut. A file can be deleted. I needed something physical, something they couldn't erase with a keystroke. I walked to the high-security compliance printer, the one that logs every page. I printed everything. Evelyn's handwritten ledger entry for Trillium Sub-Account Art V, the scans of the bank statements, the balance draining from $3,000 to $1,420.58. My boarding pass to New York, time-stamped to the exact moment I was supposedly signing away $1 million, the system log showing the Marla override command, the IP trace to the executive lounge, a series of high-resolution stills from the DevOps video feed. Tate entering, Marla entering, her hand clutching the token. I didn't staple them. I took my time. I slid each sheet, one by one, into a heavy-duty, crystal-clear plastic page protector. I snapped all 30 pages into a 2-inch transparent binder. It was heavy in my hands. It was an immutable object, physical proof. I looked at the clock. 9:15 a.m. I had my grandmother's ledger. I had the digital ghost on video. I had my independent camera feed waiting. The trap was set. All I had to do was walk into it. I found her on the 39th floor, in the old Sloan tea room. It was a pocket of the building that time, and Marla's modernization had forgotten. The carpet was thick, muffling all sound. The chairs were upholstered in heavy damask silk. There were no glass walls, no broadcast screens, just 2 armchairs facing a cold, marble fireplace, and critically, no security cameras. Grant's obsession with optics didn't extend to rooms no one used. She was sitting by the window, not drinking tea, just holding a porcelain cup. She looked small against the tall velvet curtains. I walked in. The binder was heavy in my hand. I didn't say anything. I just stood in the doorway. She didn't turn around, but her reflection in the dark window pane met mine. "You have been busy, Rowan," she said to the glass. "So have they." "They are clumsy," she said, a simple statement of fact. "They mistake noise for power." She turned. Finally, her eyes were the color of a winter sky. They were not kind. They were appraising. They were the eyes of the woman who built Vale Mechanicals out of scrap and will. I placed the transparent binder on the low table between us. She didn't look at it. She already knew what was in it. She had left me the map. "They believe I am weak," she said. "They believe I am a relic, a name on a building. They bring me reports. They bring me lattes. They tell me how wonderful their new initiatives are." She paused, her gaze flicking to the binder. "You read the ledger." "I did." "You saw the Trillium account." "I did." "Then you saw my condition." "Upon demonstration of independent integrity." She leaned forward, the porcelain cup rattling slightly in its saucer as she set it down. Her eyes bored into me. This was the real meeting, the hearing downstairs, the transparency forum. That was just theater. This was the test. So, I will ask you again. Rowan, she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. Now that you know it exists, now that you know it was yours, if you get that money back, what will you do with it? The room was silent. I could hear the faint hum of the building's HVAC system, a distant, digital heartbeat. She wasn't asking what I would do. She was asking who I was. The condition on the trust was integrity. This was the final exam. If I said I'd keep it, if I said I'd sue for it, I would fail. I would prove I was just like them, just another veil grabbing what they could. I met her gaze. It was never my money, Grandma. Her expression didn't change, but I felt the atmosphere shift, a drop in barometric pressure. It was a test, I continued, my voice low and steady. And the money in that account was a tool. You didn't put it there for me to spend. You put it there to see who would try to take it. Now that it's been taken, and the theft has been documented, the money itself is just a liability. It's evidence. I thought of the Future Daughters Foundation, Grant's PR slush fund. So, no, I said. I won't keep it. I will return it to where it was supposed to go, to the people it was stolen from. And since it was stolen from a ghost, its only clean destination is a public one. It goes to a real foundation, a scholarship, something clean, something transparent, something they can never, ever touch. A flicker, a tiny, almost imperceptible softening at the corners of her mouth. It was a smile as thin as waxed paper. Correct answer, she said. She breathed out, a long, slow sigh. It was the first time I had ever seen her relax. Marla is very good with her new systems, Evelyn murmured, almost to herself. So good. She locked me out of my own accounts, 2 years ago, after my last contribution. She looked at me, and now there was a different light in her eyes. Not appraisal, alliance. She told the board I was getting confused, that my manual overrides were compromising the integrity of the digital workflow, her workflow. So they transferred final signatory power to the CFO, to her. I could see the top-line balances, but I couldn't see the transactions. I was a founder, in my own company, given an allowance and a pat on the head. She saw it all. She saw the ambition turn to greed. She saw her children, the ones who inherited the empire, become common thieves. I knew they were stealing, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I could feel it. The marks were there, but they were in a language I couldn't read. Your language, Rowan, the digital one. She had been waiting, not in weakness, but in patience. She was an old, patient spider, and she had been waiting for the one person in the family who knew how to read the new maps. She was waiting for the one person who respected the locks. The USB drive was part 1, she said. She reached up to the back of her head, her movements precise. Her hair was held in a tight, silver chignon. She drew out a single, long pin. It wasn't a simple pin. It was heavy, silver, and carved at the head into the shape of a dogwood flower, its 4 petals stark and perfect. This is part 2. She held it out to me. It wasn't an accessory. It was a piece of hardware. What is it? The keys to the new kingdom, she said. The USB key you have? It's encrypted. It only holds the raw data. This is the decryption key. She turned it over in her palm. It's an NFC token, near-field communication, your generation's magic. The USB is useless without it, and it is useless without the USB. They wouldn't know what to look for. They only see an old woman's hairpin. She pressed the pin into my hand. The silver was cold and heavy, the petals sharp against my skin. When you are on that stage, she said, this is your authority. The drive has the data. This has the signature, my signature, the real one. I closed my hand around it. Inside that token, she continued, is a file, a letter, addressed to the board of directors. Dated today, it is an affidavit, signed by me, attesting to the creation of the Trillium Trust, its purpose as a test, and the total lack of authorization for any withdrawals. She paused. It is, however, incomplete. It is a letter waiting for its evidence. It is waiting for you to attach the files, your boarding pass, the video, the proxy logs. I understood. She wasn't just giving me a weapon. She was giving me her crown. She was formally and legally deputizing me, in front of the entire company, to act as her proxy. She was making me the executor of her will. They believe they are holding a hearing to fire you, she said, a new, cold fire in her eyes. They are wrong. You are holding a hearing to fire them. I finally knew what she wanted. I had been wrong, thinking this was about money or even the company. This was about her name. This was about the marks. Marla and Grant hadn't just stolen money. They had made the ledger unbalanced. They had corrupted the system. Evelyn Vale did not build an empire to see it fall to sloppy, greedy accounting. She wanted justice, not a quiet resignation, not a backroom deal to protect the family. She didn't want to muzzle them. She wanted them exposed. Return it, in public. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the integrity, the name, the brand they had so carefully polished, which they had rotted from the inside. I slid the dogwood pin into the breast pocket of my blazer, where it sat like a medal. I picked up the transparent binder. I looked at my grandmother, the 82-year-old relic, the ghost in the machine. She was the most dangerous person I had ever met. It's 9:50 a.m., I said. Then we shouldn't be late for the show, she replied. Evelyn Vale stood up, her spine like rebar. She picked up her simple, black cane. Another affectation. I now realized. Another piece of camouflage. And rapped it once on the marble floor. I held the door open for her. We walked out of the quiet, antique tea room and into the bright, modern, glass and steel corridor. We walked together, side by side, the old founder and the angry auditor, 2 generations of Vale women, 2 sides of the same coin. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. We understood each other perfectly, in the silent language of symbols, keys, and ledgers. We walked towards the bank of elevators, the ones that would take us up to the 40th floor, to the auditorium, to the stage. The 40th floor auditorium was a cathedral of glass, light, and calculated image. The Chicago gray sky pressed in on 3 sides, a cold, indifferent audience. 500 silver gray chairs were filled with employees, a sea of anxious, expectant faces. They had been summoned for transparency, and they were wrapped. At the front, on a stage of pale maple wood, a single, massive LED screen glowed with one word, 20 feet high. Transparency. My Uncle Grant stood at the podium, bathed in a soft, flattering spotlight. He was in his element. This was his stage, his production, his narrative, his voice, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system, was rich with false sincerity. And that is why Westbridge Systems is, and always will be, a family, he boomed, his arms spread wide. A family built on one, unshakable foundation, and that foundation is trust. He paused for effect. The word trust hung in the air, echoing slightly. My grandmother and I had entered from a side door, timed perfectly with his opening. We sat in the back row, 2 shadows in a room full of light. I saw Marla, in the front VIP row, spot us. She nudged Tate. A flicker of annoyance? No, anticipation. They thought we were here to be lambs at their slaughter. Trust is not just a word, Grant continued, pacing the stage. It is our bond. It is the currency of our integrity. It's what allows us to look our partners, our shareholders, and each other in the eye and say, we are accountable. I felt Evelyn, beside me, go perfectly still. She was a statue of iron. But accountability, Grant said, his voice dropping, taking on a tone of pained gravity, is not always easy. Sometimes it is the most difficult thing in the world. Sometimes it means facing truths, even when those truths are close to home. Here it comes, the pivot. Grant looked over to the VIP row, where Marla was sitting, her face a mask of sober concern. She nodded, just once, as if on cue. "Today," Grant said, "we were scheduled to discuss our new Future Daughters Foundation, a project I am incredibly proud of. But something has come to our attention, a serious matter of compliance. Marla?" He yielded the floor. My Aunt Marla stood up. She did not walk to the podium. She turned, her eyes scanning the crowd, and found me in the back row. She didn't look angry. She looked, to my absolute disgust, heartbroken. It was a masterful performance. "Thank you, Grant," she said, her voice carrying a practiced, empathetic tremor. She looked directly at me, the spotlight operator, no doubt on her instructions, found me and Evelyn, pinning us in a cone of white light. The entire audience turned. "Before we begin," Marla said, her voice dripping with pity, we have a family matter to attend to. My niece, our head of compliance, Rowan Vale, has something she needs to share with us." A collective, muffled gasp. 500 pairs of eyes. I was the target. The music had stopped, and I was the one left standing. "Rowan?" Marla prompted, her voice soft as poison. "Please, come up. We are all here to listen. This is a safe space." I stood up. The binder was in my left hand, cold and heavy. My right hand was in my pocket, wrapped around the dogwood pin. I began the long walk down the center aisle. The only sound was the sharp, solitary click, click, click of my heels on the polished concrete floor. It was the longest walk of my life. Every eye was on me. I saw the whispers, the phones being discreetly raised. I saw the PR team, lined up against the wall, looking grim and determined. They were ready for the confession. I reached the low stairs and ascended the stage. Grant had moved to the side, his arms crossed, a perfect picture of a troubled leader. Marla stood near the podium, her mask of pity firmly in place. They had left the main microphone open for me. I walked to it. I looked out at the sea of faces, my people, my colleagues, the people I was supposed to be protecting. I took a deep breath. "Thank you, Marla, Grant," I said. My voice was amplified, filling the room. It was steady. It was cold. "You're right. I do have something to share." I saw Marla nod, a tiny, satisfied gesture. Got her. "I will," I continued. "But first, I need you all to see this." Before Marla or Grant could react, I turned to the technical podium. It had a simple, one-touch interface for presenters. I pulled Evelyn's silver USB drive from my pocket and slid it into the port. "Rowan, what is this?" Grant said, his voice snapping, losing its warmth. "This is not on the agenda." "It is now," I said. I hit play on the first file. Cam XX Lounge 42 Betas Feed Back. The giant transparency logo vanished, replaced by a grainy black and white video feed. The audience gasped. "What is this?" Marla hissed. The timestamp in the corner was clear. The location tag, XX Lounge 42. The video played, 21:08:14. Tate Vale, my cousin. He slips into the room, his face a mask of nervous energy, 21:11:02. Marla Vale, my aunt. She walks in, her face set, her hand clutching the black. USB. God key. The room was silent. You could hear the building's ventilation system. 21:16:05. The log from my trace, which I had overlaid on the video, popped up in red text. Action. Delegate sign. User, mvale proxy, target file. Trillium RV sub. "Turn it off," Grant roared, lunging for the podium. "Shut it down. Cut the feed." The PR team scrambled. A man with a headset started pounding on a laptop. The main screen flickered and went black. A murmur of confusion and anger swept the room. They had seen it. They had all seen it. "The main feed is down. Mr. Vale," the tech yelled, panicked. "But the external live stream, it's still running. We can't kill the stream. Grant's face went from tanned and confident to a sickly, pale white. He looked at Marla, who was staring at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. The mask was gone. You can cut the screen, I said, my voice ringing out, no longer needing the microphone in the stunned silence. I raised the clear plastic binder high in the air. But you can't cut paper. I walked back to the podium, past a frozen Grant. This, I said, is my grandmother's private ledger. I held it up. The cameras that were still live, the ones on employees' phones, the main broadcast camera that was streaming to the world, zoomed in. They could see the sharp, inclined script, the columns of numbers, the name Trillium. And this, I said, is her authority. I pulled the silver dogwood pin from my pocket. Marla's eyes widened. She knew what it was, or at least, she knew it was hers. I touched the flower-shaped head of the pin to the NFC reader on the podium laptop. Decryption key accepted. The black screen flickered back to life, but this time it was my desktop, and on it, a single PDF, Eveline Vale, affidavit to the Board of Directors. The room inhaled as one. My grandmother's letter, I announced, attesting to the creation of a $3 million trust, in my name, as a test of integrity, a trust I never knew existed, a trust she was locked out of. I clicked to the next slide. The screen filled with bank statements, the ones from the USB. My voice was cold, precise, the voice of an auditor. But the fund is empty. Where did it go? I used the laser pointer, its red dot a tiny, vicious speck of light on the giant screen. $1 million. Transferred 18 months ago. Destination. Sea-level bonus pool. Signed, R. Vale. Proxy authorization, M. Vale. I aimed the laser at Marla. She flinched. $750,000. 11 months ago. Destination. Executive strategy bonus. Signed, R. Vale. Proxy authorization, M. Vale. I aimed the laser at Tate, who looked like he was going to be sick. And the remainder, 3 weeks ago, destination, a new, unvetted entity. I clicked again. The logo for the Future Daughters Foundation filled the screen. Grant's face, Grant's signature. All of it, I said. Paid for with my money, my signature, forged by my aunt, to pay herself, her nephew, and her brother, who used the dregs to fund his new PR stunt. I turned off the laser pointer. I looked away from my family, away from the audience, and directly into the lens of the main broadcast camera, the one still streaming to the world. I spoke slowly, clearly. This is how my $3 million trust fund was spent. A fund I never even knew I had. The silence was a physical thing. It was a vacuum, sucking the air from the 40th floor auditorium. The massive, glowing transparency sign was now a monument to a spectacular miscalculation. 500 employees sat in stunned paralysis, their faces a pale sea of glowing phone screens, all still recording. Then the ice cracked. This is a lie, a performance. Marla's voice, she didn't use the podium mic. She snatched the handheld one from the VIP table. Her voice, sharp and synthetic, blasting through the speakers, her face, no longer pitiful, was a tight, white mask of fury. She wasn't speaking to me. She was speaking to the board members in the front row. It was a legal proxy, a standard delegation of authority. It is perfectly within the CFO's charter to manage and reallocate executive funds. She is twisting a routine transfer into a conspiracy. A legal proxy, I repeated. My voice, by contrast, was calm, amplified by the podium mic. I didn't turn to face her. I spoke to the audience. A legal proxy requires consent. Marla, did you ask for mine? Consent is implied in the C-level charter. Did you ask me? I repeated, my voice cutting cleanly through hers. If you could use my digital signature to sign off on a $1 million bonus for yourself? This is absurd. It's a workflow. Let's look at that workflow, I said. I clicked. The screen changed, pulling up the code I'd found in the DevOps mirror. Workflow, Marla override exec pay. This, I said, pointing, is not a workflow in any corporate charter. This is a custom-built backdoor, a piece of code you commissioned to impersonate my credentials and bypass the very compliance checks I put in place. A delegation is transparent. This is identity theft. She's lying. The authorization is legal. Marla was screaming now. Fine, I said. Let's assume you're right. Let's assume I wanted to sign it. Let's assume I happily authorized my own mystery money to pay you. I clicked again. The screen split. On the left, the first, largest transfer. Timestamp, October 10th, 9:15 a.m. On the right, a new image appeared, a scanned document. This is my boarding pass, I said. American Airlines Flight 44, Boston to New York, departure 9:05 a.m. And this? I clicked again. A GPS map, a blue dot, tracking a path over southern Connecticut. Is my phone's location data, subpoenaed from our carrier this morning, showing me at 30,000 feet at the exact moment I was supposedly in my office, signing away $1 million. I turned to the stunned board members. I am the best compliance officer this company has, but I am not good enough to commit wire fraud from the stratosphere while my laptop is legally stowed in an overhead bin. It was a test. The voice was thin, desperate. Tate, my cousin, lurched forward from his seat, his face slick with sweat. It was an internal test, a simulation. We were stress testing the new bonus allocation system, that's all. We were going to tell you. A test, I repeated. I let the word hang in the air. A test. So the $1 million that landed in your personal offshore account, Tate, that was test money? It was scheduled to be rerouted, he stammered. Was it? Because my audit shows it's still there. You must be very, very stressed, Tate. But you're right about one thing, I said, turning back to the podium. You did talk about it. You put it in writing. I clicked. The screen filled with a new image, an email. The audience collectively leaned in. From Tate Vale to Marla Vale. Subject, Re-Q3 bonus gap. I looked at Tate. He looked like he was going to be physically ill. Tate, would you like to read this, or should I? He sank back into his chair, a broken thing. I turned back to the audience. My voice was flat, cold, the voice of a machine reading data. Marla, I read. The auditors. I paused, looking at the room of my colleagues. That's me. The auditors are sniffing around the bonus gap. We can't justify the C-level draw from the main operations budget. It's too clean. I continued to read, my voice the only sound in the vacuum. Use the new sub, the one we found. Push the draw through the R sub-account to cover the gap. It's dormant. She'll never see it. And it ties the bonus to a family asset. It's cleaner. Just make sure the authorization bypasses her queue. I took a breath. I read the last, fatal line. And whatever you do, don't let the old woman know. Silence. The whir of the HVAC system was deafening. The sound of 500 people realizing the scope of the betrayal. Don't let the old woman know. I let my eyes travel from Grant's frozen, ashen face to Marla's, which was no longer angry, but void, a black hole, to Tate, who was staring at his hands. Gabbo, I said, my voice soft again. We have a disagreement. You say it's a legal proxy. I say it's fraud. You say it's a test. I say it's a cover-up. It seems we have a fundamental dispute over ownership. I turned, looking to the main doors at the back of the auditorium. Which is why, I announced, my voice booming, I invited my grandmother's independent legal counsel to join us. The heavy oak doors swung open. A man walked in. He was 80 years old, dressed in a severe gray suit that looked like it was from the 1960s. This was Arthur Covington. He was not a Westbridge lawyer. He was a shark, the most feared probate and trust attorney in the state. He worked for one person, Evelyn Vale. He walked slowly, deliberately, down the center aisle. the sharp tap, tap, tap of his cane on the floor echoing like a gavel. He didn't come to the stage. He stopped in the front row, standing directly in front of the board, and turned to face me. "Mr. Covington," I said, my voice formal. "Thank you for coming. You have reviewed the documents in this binder?" "I have, Ms. Vale." His voice was like gravel, and the microphone picked it up perfectly. "You have seen my grandmother's private ledger. Can you confirm the handwriting?" "I can," he stated. "I have represented Ms. Evelyn Vale for 45 years. That is her hand, that is her private ledger, and that is her signature." "And Mr. Covington," I continued, "can you confirm, as the architect of her estate, the legal standing of the entity known as Trillium and its designated beneficiary?" He turned, addressing the board members directly. "The Trillium Corporation is a private trust, established by Ms. Evelyn Vale. It is her personal property, legally and entirely separate from Westbridge corporate assets. Its sole, designated beneficiary is Ms. Rowan Elspeth Vale. The funds within are, and have always been, her personal, non-corporate property." It was done. He hadn't just confirmed theft from the company. He had confirmed grand larceny from me, personally. I let his words settle. I looked at Marla. She was finished. Tate was finished. But I wasn't. I turned my gaze to the man still frozen on the stage beside me. The man who curated this entire circus. My Uncle Grant. He was trying to compose himself, to separate himself from the wreckage. This is a shocking and terrible discovery," he stammered, trying to reclaim the podium. "Marla, Tate, I am appalled. This forum was about transparency, and I am glad Rowan has brought this." "Stop," I said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command. He stopped. "You are the Chief Communications Officer," I said. "You control the narrative. You approve every press release, every town hall. You are the master of optics." I stepped closer to him. "So, I have one last question for you. Grant," he flinched. "This meeting, this transparency forum, why today? Why this, of all days, was the one you decided Westbridge Systems had to live stream to our entire external press list?" He had no answer. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He, the man of a million empty words, was finally silent. The blood drained from his face as he, and the entire room, realized the final, damning truth. He didn't just know about the trap. He promoted it. He sent out the invitations. He wanted the media to see my public execution. I turned away from his gaping, horrified face and looked directly into the lens of the main broadcast camera, the one still streaming to the world. "He has no answer," I said, "so I'll give him one. He wanted a public spectacle. He wanted the press to watch him execute his auditor, live, to cover his own tracks." I leaned closer to the camera. "So, thank you, Uncle Grant. Thank you for ensuring the public could be our witness. Thank you for providing the transparency. You have finally done this company a great service." The room was silent. In the front row, I saw her, the lead independent director, a formidable woman from a Boston firm. She looked at Marla. She looked at Grant. She looked at me. Then, she looked to the head of internal security. Standing by the wall, she gave a single, sharp nod. The head of security touched his earpiece. He nodded. He and two other uniformed guards stepped away from the wall. They did not move toward me. They did not move toward the stage. They moved, calmly and deliberately, toward the front VIP row. They moved toward Marla, Grant, and Tate. The cross-examination was over. The security guards didn't run. They walked. Their heavy, measured footsteps on the maple stage were the only sound in the room. They formed a silent line between me and my family. Marla, Tate, and Grant were no longer executives. They were flight risks. I turned from the security detail, from the frozen, shattered faces of my family, and addressed the audience, the employees, the board, the live, streaming world. My voice was not triumphant, it was formal, the voice of pure compliance. "Mr. Covington," I said, my voice carrying over the podium mic, "has confirmed the legal status of the Trillium Trust as my personal property. However, this money was never intended for me. It was a tool, and now its purpose has been served." I looked directly at the main camera. This was never about personal enrichment. It was about accountability. Therefore, the funds must be returned, not to me, but to a purpose my grandmother, the real Evelyn Vale, intended. I clicked the remote. The screen changed, displaying a new, formal document. Articles of Incorporation, the Eveline Vale Women in Technology Scholarship Fund. "Mr. Covington," I announced, "has just filed the paperwork to create this foundation, and as of 10:15 a.m. this morning, I have signed a legally binding order to claw back every dollar." I clicked again. 3 new documents appeared. Transfer order, transfer order, transfer order. An immediate recall of the $1 million from Ms. Marla Vale's Executive Compensation Fund. An immediate recall of the $1 million from Mr. Tate Vale's offshore bonus account. And an immediate recall of the full combined amount from Mr. Grant Vale's executive bonus and his future daughter's foundation slush fund. The screen showed the total $3,000. The entire $3 million, I declared, has been transferred, in full, to the Eveline Vale Scholarship Fund. I advanced the slide. A new contract appeared. "This new fund," I explained, "will be locked. It will be managed by an independent third party, Cambridge Trust, with no ties to Westbridge Systems or any member of the Vale family. Its books will be open and audited quarterly by an external, Big Four accounting firm." I took a final, steadying breath. This was the last piece. As the legal beneficiary of the original trust, I have signed away all personal rights, title, and interest to this money. I will receive nothing. My only connection to this fund, as stipulated in its charter, will be the one I hold for this company. Compliance. I will retain the right to audit, and nothing more. I was done. I had taken their theft, their lies, their public trap, and forged it into a permanent, transparent, ironclad monument to the very integrity they tried to destroy. For a long, terrible moment, the room was utterly still. No one moved, no one breathed. Then, from the back row, a new sound. Tap, tap, tap. My grandmother, Evelyn Vale. She was standing, pushing herself up from her chair. She held her cane in one hand. With the other, her free hand, she began to clap, a slow, deliberate, steady applause. It was a signal, a release. One person in the front row, an analyst from my team, stood up and began to clap with her. Then another, then a board member. Within 5 seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet. The silence shattered, replaced by a wave of applause. Not a polite, corporate clap, but a deafening, thunderous roar. It was a sound of relief, of anger, of justice. It was a sound I had never heard in this building. It was the sound of the uncomfortable wall finally holding. I let it wash over me for a moment. Then I raised my hand. The room, slowly, fell quiet. My grandmother has one final statement. I stepped back from the podium. I gestured to Arthur Covington, her lawyer. He walked to the microphone, the applause dying to a respectful hush. He held up the affidavit I had decrypted with the dogwood pin. He did not read it with passion. He read it like a verdict. "A letter from Evelyn Vale to the Board of Directors, dated today," he began, his voice like stone. "To the board, I created this company with one principle. The ledger must balance. The mark the money leaves is the only truth. For 2 years, I have watched my children and grandchildren corrupt this principle. They built systems I could not read, to hide thefts I could not see. They believed I was a relic. They were wrong. They believed my compliance officer was a nuisance. They were wrong. Trust is not a word you put on a screen. Trust must be measured. It must be audited. It must be proven, dollar by dollar. Today, my trust has been returned, my ledger has been balanced, the marks have been found. I trust my granddaughter, Rowan Vale, to enforce this principle. I trust no one else. He finished. Signed, Evelyn Vale, founder. As he stepped back, the lead independent director, the woman from the Boston firm, stood up. Her face was granite. In light of this horrifying evidence, she said, her voice shaking with controlled rage, the board of directors convenes an emergency session, effective immediately. Ms. Marla Vale, Mr. Grant Vale, and Mr. Tate Vale are hereby suspended from all duties, titles, and access, pending a full, independent, external investigation. Security, who had been waiting, moved in. They flanked Marla, Grant, and Tate. Sirs, ma'am, please come with us. It was quiet. It was professional. It was over. I watched them be led, not in handcuffs, but in shame, out the side door. The room watched with me. I turned back to the podium one last time. My uncle was right about one thing, I said. This is a transparency forum. I clicked to my final slide. It was a single, massive QR code. This link, I announced, is now live on our internal server. It contains every document you saw today, the ledgers, the bank statements, my boarding pass, the video file, the override logs, the email from Tate, my grandmother's letter, the articles for the new scholarship, all of it. The evidence is yours. The truth is yours. Phones were raised all over the room, hundreds of them, all scanning the code, all downloading the truth. My phone, in my pocket, began to buzz, a frantic, vibrating rhythm. Then another phone buzzed in the front row, and another. The external shareholders, the press, the investors who had been watching the live stream. The world was now reacting. They were calling for an emergency meeting. The stock was halting. The machine had been stopped. I looked at the room, at my team, at the board, at the camera. No one, I said, my voice clear and final, is above compliance. No one is above the audit, not even family. I bowed my head, a small, formal gesture of thanks, and I stepped away from the podium, out of the spotlight, and off the stage. I pushed through the heavy velvet curtain. The roar of the auditorium was instantly muffled, as if I had plunged my head underwater. Backstage was a different world. It was dim, cool, and functional. A web of thick black cables taped to the floor, metal scaffolding, and half-empty water bottles on a folding table. The bright, hot chaos of the stage felt 1,000 miles away. She was waiting for me. Evelyn Vale was not watching the stage. She was standing by a fire exit, her posture immaculate. Her lawyer, Arthur Covington, a silent shadow beside her. The applause from the other side of the curtain was still a rolling, thunderous wave, but in here, there was only silence. I walked toward her. My hands were steady, but my pulse was a frantic drum against my ribs. I had done it. I had returned it. In public. Evelyn watched me approach, her gray eyes analytical. They weren't warm, not even now. They were the eyes of an engineer who had just watched a complex machine perform its function perfectly. She reached out, not to hug me, but to place her cold, dry hand on my wrist, just as she had at the brunch that had started it all. Well, she said, her voice a low rasp, barely audible. You've finally done it. I was confused. I filed the transfer. The money is... No, she cut me off, her grip tightening slightly. You have spent your trust fund. I stopped. I stared at her, and the final, critical piece of the puzzle slid into place. Her first question, the one that felt like an ambush, the one that had set the entire trap in motion. How are you spending your $3 million trust fund? It was never a question. It was the brief. It was the objective. She wasn't asking me what I was buying. She was asking me how I was deploying it, how I was using it, spending it, not on myself, but for a purpose, to drain the swamp, to expose the rot, to buy back the soul of her company. Yes, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I spent it all. I knew you would, she said. The thinnest of smiles touched her lips. I knew you would understand the condition. Upon demonstration of independent integrity, the test was not to have the money. The test was to know what to do with it once it was revealed. Arthur Covington stepped forward, holding his briefcase. Ms. Vale, this was left in my care, to be given to you only upon the public exposure of the trillium theft. He handed my grandmother a small, cream-colored envelope. It was old, the edges slightly yellowed. My grandmother took it and handed it to me. Rowan, she said, my name, in her sharp, familiar script. She hadn't written it today. She had written it a long time ago. This, she said, was meant for you 2 years ago. The day I opened the Trillium account in your name, I gave it to our trusted family office to deliver to you. But I know, Marla, she said, the name like ice. She intercepted it. She had begun managing my personal correspondence to reduce my stress. She screened everything. She must have seen the name Trillium, investigated, and decided to keep this from you and wait for her moment. My fingers trembled, just slightly, as I broke the old wax seal. The paper was thick. The note was short, only a few lines. Rowan, I have set aside an asset in your name. It is not a gift. It is a light. They will try to take it. Greed is a reflex, not a plan. When they do not be angry. Be ready. If they take what is yours, use the theft itself to shine a light on them. The act of stealing is the brightest evidence you will ever have. Your job is not to protect the money. Your job is to count the marks. I am counting on you, E.V. I read it twice. My God. I looked up at her, my throat tight. You knew. You didn't just suspect them. You knew they would do this. You set a $3 million trap. I set a test, she corrected me, her voice sharp. I test my materials. I test my systems. I test my people. I built an empire on knowing what would bend and what would break. I knew their nature, greed, laziness, arrogance. They were flawed material. She tapped my hand, the one holding the letter. You, she said, are not. I gave them a loaded gun. I gave you the audit logs. Her eyes held mine, and for the first time, I saw not just an engineer, but a matriarch, a founder. They forgot. Rowan, they saw you as a function, an obstacle. They forgot you are the only other Vale who actually counts the numbers. A sharp cough behind us broke the spell. It was the head of security. He had come through the curtain, his face grim but professional. He nodded to Evelyn, then to me. Ms. Vale, he said, acknowledging us both as equals. The suspended parties are secure in the 40th floor conference room. Their access has been revoked. All corporate-issued devices, laptops, tablets, phones, have been seized. The executive hard drives are being mirrored as we speak, and all physical data is being sealed by the external audit team that Mr. Covington had on standby. The digital fortress, ma'am. It's ours. Thank you, Captain, Evelyn said. He nodded and vanished, his duty done. My phone, which I'd ignored for an hour, was a heavy weight in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen was a nightmare of notifications. Hundreds of emails, dozens of texts, missed calls from numbers I recognized as financial press. I ignored them all. One message, on my secure internal chat app, stood out. It was from the head of my DevOps team, the man who ran the beta test servers where I'd found the video. I just want you to know, we saw what you were looking for last night. We didn't stop you. A second message came in right after. Marla had us all sign new NDAs 6 months ago. We were legally trapped. We couldn't talk. We're sorry we couldn't help. And then a third, thank you for opening the door. You have no idea what you've done for us. I closed my eyes. I hadn't just exposed my family. I had liberated my colleagues. They weren't just careless. They were cruel. They had turned the builders into prisoners in their own system. I looked away from my grandmother, back toward the stage. I pushed the heavy curtain aside, just an inch. The auditorium was emptying. The board had been escorted to an emergency session. The employees were filing out, not in a chaotic rush, but in small, stunned, buzzing groups. The stage itself was empty. The AV crew, sensing the show was over, had finally cut the power. The massive 20-foot-high LED screen, which had blazed with transparency and my evidence, was now a void, a giant, black mirror. It was finished. The storm had passed, and the sea was flat, dark, and calm. I looked back at my phone. The secure chat was blinking. But I opened my main corporate email. The subject lines were a flood. Thank you from the 22nd floor. What you did today. Thank you. Ms. Vale. It was an ocean of gratitude. Not from executives, from junior analysts, from programmers in the R&D basement, from administrative assistants, from young women in the finance department, who I now realized must have lived in terror of Marla, the invisible employees, the ones Grant was going to save with his pathetic, stolen, future daughter's foundation. I had returned the money, and in doing so, had given them a voice. They were not invisible, not anymore. I felt a sudden, strange weight on my lapel. I looked down. I was still wearing the microphone, the small black clip-on mic the AV tech had given me when I first walked on stage. The battery pack was still hot against my back. I had been broadcasting this entire time, backstage. My conversation with my grandmother, the security report. I wasn't sure if the main feed was still live, but it didn't matter. I reached for the battery pack, hidden under my blazer. My fingers found the small, raised power switch. I pushed it. There was a tiny, faint click, a satisfying, metallic sound. The sound of a circuit breaking, the sound of a key turning in a well-made lock. The case was closed. The ledger was balanced. I was off the air. On the stage I had just left, the lead independent director, Ms. Kendrick, stepped up to the podium, the small red light on the broadcast camera. The one Grant had set up for his own triumph was still glowing. The live stream was still active. The world was still watching. "The board of directors," she announced, her voice a cold, precise instrument, echoing in the stunned room, "has voted unanimously in emergency session. We are launching a full, independent, external investigation into the actions of Ms. Marla Vale, Mr. Grant Vale, and Mr. Tate Vale, effective immediately. All three are suspended from all duties, titles, and access to all Westbridge properties." I didn't stay to hear the rest. I had already turned and pushed through the heavy side curtain. My grandmother was waiting for me in the dim quiet of the backstage corridor. She held her cane, but her other hand was extended toward me. I took it. Her skin felt like old, dry paper, but her grip was like a steel trap. We didn't speak. We walked together, leaving the noise, the shock, and the wreckage of the auditorium behind. We moved down the 40th floor sky corridor, the long hallway of pure glass that overlooked the city, the panic on the trading floors, the emergency shareholder calls, the rapid chaotic implosion of my family's power. It was all happening out there, but in here, it was silent. The afternoon sun was low and sharp. It cut through the glass walls, striping the gray carpet with long, perfect bars of silver light. It was utterly quiet. Just the sound of my heels on the floor and the steady, rhythmic tap of her cane. My phone, in my coat pocket, began to vibrate. It was a frantic, angry, desperate buzzing. I pulled it out. The screen read, "Unknown number, The New York Times." I looked at Evelyn. She met my gaze and gave a single, slow nod. I answered, "This is Rowan Vale." A voice, sharp and fast, tumbled out of the receiver. "Ms. Vale, can you give us a comment on the suspension of 3 Westbridge executives, including your aunt and uncle? What exactly happened in that meeting? What was this Trillium Trust?" I paused. I stopped walking and looked out at the city, at the endless grid of glass and steel. "We returned it," I said, "in public." I ended the call. I didn't wait for a follow-up question. I powered the phone off completely. The screen went dark. Evelyn looked at me, a tiny, rare smile playing on her lips. It was a brief, dry movement, but it was a smile. "Money always leaves a mark, Rowan," she whispered, as we continued to walk. "It's the only truth. You just had to show everyone where to look." We reached the main elevator bank. The doors opened, and a frantic group of PR specialists, the ones who had worked under Grant, rushed out. They were on their way to the main lobby, to face the press conference Grant was supposed to be leading. They saw us and froze, their faces pale, their tablets in their hands. "Ms. Vale," one of them started, his voice high with panic. "The media is in the main lobby. They're demanding a statement. Let them demand," Evelyn said, her voice cutting him off. "I didn't follow them. I wasn't going to the press conference. I wasn't going to explain, or justify, or gloat. The QR code was the statement. The server was the evidence. My work was done." I left my grandmother with Arthur Covington, who had materialized from a stairwell, ready to handle the legal fallout. I bypassed the main lobby entirely. I turned, walked down the service corridor, and pressed the call button for the employee elevator. The plain, metal doors opened. It was empty. I stepped inside. The air was cool, the lighting flat. I pressed the button for the ground floor. G. The doors slid shut. The polished steel, dark and reflective, acted as a mirror. I looked at my reflection. My face was calm. My hair was slightly out of place from where I had clipped the microphone, but my eyes were steady. There was no anger left, no fear, no victory, just quiet. There was no need for any more explanation. There was no need for a second round of revenge. The game was over. It had ended the moment the truth hit the stage. It ended the moment the numbers, my grandmother's marks, were shown to the world. The last line from my grandmother's first note, the 4 words on the folded, cream-colored paper, echoed in my mind. A perfect, closed loop. Return it. In public. The elevator began its long, silent descent. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We'd love to connect with all of you. So please comment below and let us know where you're listening from and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video. And if you enjoyed this story, please support us by hitting the hype button so this video can be heard by more people.